is Claire Frost, and it's my privilege to be opening this webinar this morning. I work, of course, with the Commonwealth Local Government Forum on the programs team. I have a few technical points to share with you before a short introduction, before we really kick off into our webinar. So just in terms of technical points for this webinar today, we are recording the webinar and we will be making it available through CLGF's webpage over the course of August, so it's important that you be aware of that. And then, as we would normally do in a webinar, we'll ask you all to mute your microphones when you're not speaking. There will be a question and answer section of the webinar, at which point we would ask you please either put your questions into the chat or raise your hand, and we will call on you to speak to the floor. You can also ask to be given the floor in the chat as well, if that's more convenient for you. So we're looking forward to having an exciting and interactive webinar today. Yes, so let me move on to the actual introduction of the webinar. So this is the first of two webinars that we're holding between today and tomorrow on women in local government. Can mentoring make a difference? This is coming out of work that CLGF very passionate about as part of our Commonwealth Women in Local Government network work. We have been working over the last year with Min Garcia, who is our expert doing some research into mentoring programs across the Commonwealth. And this webinar is a first output of that process. We are working for this specific event and this piece of research in partnership with our partner PLATFORMA, which is the European platform for local and regional governments in development. And the work that we are doing is part of a wider program called Working Together Towards Empowering Local and Regional Governments for Enhanced Governance and More Effective Development Outcomes in EU partner countries, which is being funded by the European Union. So this initiative, as I said, is being spearheaded by the Commonwealth Women in Local Government Network, which was launched in 2017 as part of CLGF's commitment to support greater gender parity in local government across the Commonwealth. The network has 4 priority areas that it focuses on. The first is supporting existing women in local government to further advance in their careers and to remain in local government as well. The second is working with prospective women to encourage them into local government, to increase awareness around the role of councillors and also around some of the barriers that women face in local government. The third focal area of the network is working with political parties and local government associations to remove those barriers to women entering and progressing in local government, and also to include a greater gender perspective in all areas of their work. And finally, we work on, we're working at the Commonwealth and international level to advocate for greater gender parity in local government across the Commonwealth and the world, and to gather best practice, and as well to monitor the levels of elected women in local government as part of our commitments to SDG 5 and specifically the target 5.51. So we've been working together over the last year on some research, which I was telling you about, which Min will tell us a little bit more about in her presentation. This is all part of work that we are looking to further take forward on how we as a network can support mentoring as a methodology for helping more women get into and stay and advance in their political careers. So with that said, I would like to introduce a short video from our Secretary General, who unfortunately cannot be with us today, but who wanted to absolutely address this important webinar. So I think we can put that up now.
Colleagues, welcome to our webinar, Women in Local Government, Can Mentoring Make a Difference? I'm sorry I can't join you in person, but I'm delighted to share this quick message with you as we open our discussions. The 2021 Global Gender Gap Report looks at 4 indicators of equality: economic opportunity, political leadership, education and health, to assess on an annual basis how long it will take to close the gender gap. COVID-19, as we know, has impacted women particularly hard, and the report suggests that it has extended the equality gap to 136 years. So we have a long, long way to go. At CLGF, we've recognised the importance of supporting women in both political and also technical leadership in local government. Local government touches the lives of all of us, and it's important that we have all voices around the table representing and championing the needs of citizens in local decision making. The SDGs have a specific goal related to gender equality, SDG 5, and it's significant that women in local government is one of the targets, 5.5.1b. One of the steps that we at CLGF have taken to support more women in local leadership is to establish the Commonwealth Women in Local Government network to bring together women to work with and support existing elected women, to work with and support prospective elected women and new women candidates, to work with political parties and local government associations to remove barriers to women within political systems and to mainstream gender equality across our sector. And finally, to work at the Commonwealth and the international level to gather best practice and share and replicate successes, to advocate towards Commonwealth bodies to increase women's representation and to strengthen systems of inclusion and gender mainstreaming to achieve international and national targets. One of the issues which has come up extensively over the years in our policy debates and discussions is an interest in mentoring and supporting mentoring programs as a way to support women in local leadership. And this prompted some research into how mentoring programs are already supporting women in the sector in the Commonwealth and how they could be strengthened and enhanced to better support women's political inclusion. I'd like to thank Min Garcia for her work undertaking the research, the practitioners, of course, who have contributed to the findings, a number of whom we're going to hear from today, and of course the staff team at CLGF who have prepared today's event and will also help drive our follow-up. I hope that the event will provide a great opportunity for learning and exchange. I encourage you all to participate actively, and I hope that we can move forward with some very practical recommendations to improve and strengthen mentoring programs now and in the future. As Ban Ki-moon said when asked about gender equality, achieving gender equality requires the engagement of women and men, girls and boys. It's everyone's responsibility. I therefore look forward to the outcomes of the event. I wish you a very fruitful discussion, and I hope we can all look proactively at the steps that we must take to move towards greater gender equality and meeting SDG 5 in the future. I thank you and have a good meeting. Bye-bye.
Wonderful. So now it is my pleasure and honor to introduce the Vice Chair of our Commonwealth Women in Local Government Network, Kanisha Gordon. Kanisha has served as a local government counselor for 9 years in Jamaica. She's currently the Vice President of the Caribbean Local Government Authorities Association, ALGA-J. She's the chair of CALGA's Women's Division and the chair of the Association of Local Government Authority of Jamaica's Women's Network and PRO. She's recently moved to Canada, where she'll be taking on the role of diversity specialist in one of Nova Scotia's largest municipal councils. So Kanisha, please, the floor is yours for your keynote. But you're on mute.
Thank you very much, Claire. Members of the panel, women leaders and aspiring leaders, all members here with us today, particularly those who are tuning in online, and everyone, good day to you. Allow me to acknowledge and commend the woman leader of the Commonwealth Local Government Forum, Secretary General Lucy Slack, for her commitment to women's political inclusion and her stewardship of CLGF. Women and girls across the Commonwealth, Europe and the rest of the world, it is your time now to show up, deliver, and be supported to design the new world. As a local government practitioner and as someone who had the privilege of spearheading the women's division for CALGA and the ALGA-J, I was able to design a capacity building blueprint that included a project proposal for women's political inclusion in local government to provide much needed support for elected women in local government. And I want to just say thanks to President of the ALGA-J for his support, because sometimes I believe that when we are pushing for gender parity, sometimes we don't talk about the importance of having both men and women at the table at the same time. The social, economic, and political landscape changed dramatically in the last 19 months because of COVID-19. And local government was one of the hardest hit arms of government. Yet, local government practitioners and elected officials were forced to buckle up, mask up, and sanitize to get into communities to ensure that the poor and most vulnerable had access to clean water, food, and basic needs to reduce hunger and minimize the impact of poverty, which surged during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. As a result of major job losses, decline in remittances, and the overall decline in economic activities. The uneasy position that local government was thrust in because of the pandemic made the political climate more hostile and insensitive towards women. According to an April 2020 policy brief on the impact of COVID-19 on women by the United Nations, the compounded economic impacts of COVID-19 are felt especially by women and girls who are generally earning less, saving less, and holding insecure jobs or living close to poverty. This finding is devastating, especially in relation to the recruitment of women from the pool of ordinary folks who generally understand from a lived experience the plight of the ordinary woman and men. Frankly speaking, COVID-19 has disrupted projects, programs, financial resources, and support systems that were dedicated to the empowerment and inclusion of women across critical sectors such as education, health, security, finance, and the decision-making table. By now, I know that you know that I'm talking about women's political inclusion. I will focus on mentorship, the importance of mentorship, also the importance of networking, and I will also share a little bit about my personal experience as a local government councillor. Important to note is that a quarter of a century since the adoption of the 1995 Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, advancement towards gender parity in politics, equal opportunities, and equal rights for women remains elusive. If I may borrow from the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, truth is, no country has completely achieved SDG 5. In fact, globally, countries are falling behind in meeting SDG 5 target of 5.5 that is built on women's full and effective participation and equal opportunities for leadership at all levels of the decision-making process in public life. Within the Commonwealth, it has been an uphill task for several countries to meet the Commonwealth's commitment of 30% women in public life at the decision-making table. Let us look at the case of Jamaica. At the cabinet level, Jamaica has a total of 19 members. Of the 19, 3 or only 15.7% of the members are women. At the state minister level, there are 9 members and 22.2% are women. Within the House of Representatives, there is a total of 63 members, 18 or 28.5% are women. Within the Senate, there is a total of 21 members, and only 8 or 38.09% are women. I must note, though, that the Speaker and Deputy Speaker of the House are women. Stay with me a little longer as I highlight the gender gap in Jamaica's local government system. A total of 222 councillors were elected at the polls in the 2016 local government election. Of that number, 40 or only 18% of those elected were women. At the municipal leadership level, where members are appointed from among their peers, the disparity is devastating. The country has 14 deputy mayors, and of that 14, only 1 or 7.6% is female. And at the mayoral level, the country has 14 mayors. And I know that you will all be surprised to know that all 14 are men. I want us to take a moment to examine what I just highlighted. I want us all to understand that the disparity that exists at the municipal leadership level in the case of Jamaica is not a direct reflection of the electorate, but it is the conscious decision of local government councillors, which include men and women. My questions now are, why aren't women councillors stepping forward for positions of municipal leadership? Why aren't councillors nominating and supporting women to lead municipal corporations in Jamaica? And how can local government women's networks such as CLGF and local associations position women for municipal leadership? In my opinion, this is where mentorship is critical to develop the skills, confidence, and provide a support base for women councillors. This is also where I bring in CLGF as an important platform and a safe space for exchange and support to women in local government, for them to share experiences, to source support and advocate for gender parity at all levels of government across the Commonwealth, and to strategize to reduce and ultimately eliminate barriers that have historically marginalized women. CLGF is a very important organization for achieving the goals of women's political inclusion and the achievement of SDG 5 in the Commonwealth. For reason being, the organization provides a platform for peer-to-peer mentoring. CLGF exposes women to several different perspectives and approaches from across the region and the world. The organization lends itself as a training mechanism for women to build capacity, access data, share best practices, and learn from each other. CLGF strengthens the alliance of women and organizations that are conspiring for women's advancement and gender parity. As someone who served as an elected local government councillor, I know the importance of support and safe space to share experiences. As a municipal councillor, I designed and implemented several educational and training support programs, infrastructural, health aid, social housing programs, and small community-based business ventures that minimized poverty, helped families, and enhanced the quality of life of constituents. In a nutshell, many would say I was a successful councillor. I think I would say that too. There was a formula for my success as a councillor, and it was not because I was one of the most approachable and respectful human beings in town, but it was teamwork, party support, mentoring, and family understanding of my commitment to people and community. So it was never about me as an individual, but more so, it was a network effect that helped me to navigate the tough tides of local government and the challenges of limited resources, limited paid staff support and office support, and gender and age stereotyping. Regardless of the many challenges that pave the road of service for women in leadership, I know that networking, mentoring, peer support, and capacity building are some of the greatest mechanisms to combat historical barriers and challenges that women in leadership are often faced with. I am encouraged by this CLGF initiative for women in leadership because it is filling many gaps by providing a safe space for women to learn and share experiences. This is good because a powerful energy that ignites communities and bring out the very best in people when women unite and support other women and girls. Ladies and gentlemen, the time is now to conglomerate, to disrupt, dismantle, and literally wipe out policies, laws, and programs that hinder Sustainable Development Goal number 5, suppress and discriminate against women and girls. Ladies and gentlemen, we all have a role to play. Let us act now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kanisha, for that inspiring keynote presentation. We'll now move on to Min Garcia, who is the expert who's been working with us on some research around mentoring for women's political advancement. Min is the former Deputy Director General of the Commonwealth Foundation. So Min, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Claire. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to all of you. Thank you very much to CLGF and to Platforma and to the Commonwealth Women in Local Government Network, to Vice Chair Kanisha Gordon. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to partner with all of you in trying to crystallize some of the lessons around mentoring for women's political advancement and leadership. I'd like to welcome everybody to this conversation, and it is very much part of CLGF's month of mentoring campaign, which, as Claire mentioned earlier, starts on Monday. And so what I'd like to do, or my task this afternoon, is to be able to share with you the paper that I was commissioned to do, a research paper that I was commissioned to do on the subject of mentoring for women's political advancement and leadership. And I'd like to ask our colleague Shabi to show the slides now. So what I'll be doing is I'll be highlighting or presenting, just a nutshell of the paper, a snapshot of the paper. And thereafter, we will have a conversation with members of the panel, with esteemed members of the panel, and with a colleague from Platforma as well. So what I'd like to do now is just to give you the highlights of the paper. Now, it's a challenge to present the paper in about 10 minutes or so, but I'll try my very best to make it as comprehensive and as clear an overview as I can. So why don't we start with the context? Next slide, please. So lest we forget, given that the pandemic has taken over our lives since last year, 2020 marked two significant milestones in achieving the vision of equal rights and equal opportunities for all women in the world. First, the 25th anniversary of the adoption of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action to accelerate the realization of gender equality. Secondly, the 20th anniversary of the adoption of the UN SCR 1325 on women, peace, and security, which recognize women's leadership to achieve peace and security. As Vice Chair Kenisha Gordon laid out to all of us, there is so much more work to be done. This piece of research commissioned by CLGF and PLATFORMA last year is definitely an important contribution to advancing discourse on the intersection of gender and governance. The review sets out a knowledge and learning agenda on a specific area that supports women's political advancement and leadership, inclusion of women in political spaces, and as our Secretary General Lucy Slack mentioned in her keynote address, that technical expertise among women in politics tends to be more supportive than the more political aspect of advancement and leadership. So it does this. The paper sets out a learning and a knowledge agenda by offering, one, a snapshot of multiple mentoring experiences and good practices of mentoring programs from 6 countries or in 6 countries: India, Uganda, Canada, Dominica, UK, and the Trinidad and Tobago, and 2 regions, the Basque region and the Pacific, specifically large ocean nations. And secondly, it offers a learning agenda by embarking on a month of mentoring campaign intended to draw attention and raise awareness to good practices and lessons from existing mentoring programs and spark conversations to support the increase of gender parity in local government. I'd be remiss if I don't say that the research was undertaken with a converging multiple crises in the backdrop. Next slide, please. So let's have a word on mentoring. It is important to define what we mean by mentoring. So a working definition by Eric Parslow states that mentoring is to support and encourage people to manage their own learning in order that they may maximize their potential, develop their skills, improve their performance, and become the person they want to be. But beyond the traditional view of mentoring, the paper offers a transformative feminist perspective on mentoring, which involves a long-term process that builds reciprocal relationships of solidarity, mutual learning, and support. This mentoring framework aims to enable transformation at the personal, professional, social, and political contexts, and acknowledge that learning is a continuous journey that involves building trust, sustaining connectedness, facilitating dialogues, intergenerational dialogues and conversations, allowing the mentee to journey at her own pace and navigate difficult spaces, and facilitating learning and also unlearning. Although there are some skills and strategies that may overlap, such as empathy and dialogue, it is important to differentiate mentoring from coaching and counseling. Mentoring, as opposed to coaching, is non-directive, less formalized, and not necessarily covered by a professional accreditation or certification or a contract. Next slide, please. So what are the highlights of the review? Now, I will share 3 areas or categories resulting from the analysis of the interviews and the desk research. So these are: 1, key principles and facilitating factors for successful mentoring, relationships, and programs in the context of women's political advancement and leadership. Number 2, methodologies that worked. And 3rd, lessons learned, shared by mentors, by mentees, and organizations that actually run and manage mentoring programs. Now, the paper elaborates on these 3 categories, but in the interest of time, allow me to share 3 salient points for each category. Next slide, please. Let's start with the principles and the enabling factors that actually really promoted successful mentoring relationships and programs. The first to be discussed is mutual learning and trust. Mentoring is a symbiotic learning relationship, relationship. Both mentor and mentee must mutually invest in the relationship for it to work and recognize that the process is iterative. Building and cultivating trust is foundational. Based on the interviews, the facilitating factors for cultivating a trusting relationships are open and honest communication and respect for one's and the other person's dignity. Truth telling in this relationship is vital. Risking vulnerability underpins trust building. The willingness to share one's personal journey encourages women to build from each other's experiences. And as one takes risks, the principle of confidentiality is imperative. Principle number 2, accompaniment and solidarity. It's not hit and run. So transformative mentoring is less about a contract, more than it's about engendering solidarity, amplifying voice, and it's a kind of accompaniment that encourages belongingness. It is also about telling one story and exploring new and alternative paradigms together. Accompaniment requires commitment to a long-term process and personalized support. It's not something that you can rush. This kind of mentoring inspires women and builds in them not only confidence, but courage to break patterns, challenge patriarchal mindsets, disrupt the status quo, which was the call of the vice chair earlier to be disruptive, and power imbalances, and to face what can be both a rewarding and challenging political journey. The third principle that I'd like to speak about is one size does not fit all. Intersectionality and specificity. Contextual specificity is fundamental in designing and undertaking a mentoring program. It is an important principle to be mindful of cultural specificity, gender and its intersectionality, and to harness ownership by the mentee. For example, the pace of the mentoring process must be in step with that of the mentee's political journey and must have clear goals and accountability. So the mentor and the mentee must agree on what it is that they want to achieve together. And what does mentoring look like, for example, for young urban women who are starting in their political career, as opposed to older women who may not be in an urban area, but in a grassroots community, for example? And what about mentoring in the context of Indigenous peoples and communities? Next slides. Let's move on to methodologies and approaches. So what actually worked according to the interviews and the research that we've done? The first is one-to-one mentoring. Face-to-face one-to-one mentoring has proven to work best. This methodology is most conducive in establishing a relationship of trust, which requires personal approach built over time. There is no substitute for face-to-face and one-to-one mentoring. The second methodology that I'd like to speak about is ways of knowing and learning beyond desk conversations. So briefly on 4 points. The first way of learning, or an approach to learning and knowing, is learning by doing. You know, when I was talking to the women from across the Commonwealth and the EU, the mentees were saying that they benefit a lot from mentors who take them in campaign trails, who give them a seat to observe actual legislative or executive meetings, who share opportunities for shadowing and allow them to speak and be recognized in public engagements. This is really about also exposure and visibility, which is really a challenge to women in politics, but also once addressed can in fact move them to a position of advantage, particularly when it comes to campaigning. You know, the economic disadvantage of women couldn't be more strong. So learning by doing is something that's appreciated. The second one is peer-to-peer learning, which again, our vice chair spoke about. Mutual learning is facilitated well among peers. The spirit of collegiality, empathy, openness are just some of the ingredients that make learning with peers beneficial. The third approach or methodology is the combination of both formal and informal processes. Now, trainings and formal courses often offer entry points for establishing mentoring relationships, or at times complement existing mentoring relationships or programs. On the other hand, informal and organic mentoring relationships may take place without necessarily a companion or accompanying formal training course. The consensus established by the review points to the effectiveness of the informal nature of mentoring. The last way of learning is collaborative learning. Apart from one-to-one sessions, collaborative group learning has facilitated both skills training and confidence building. Bringing together, for example, mentees, 3 to 5 of them that are being mentored by one woman, or bringing together pairs of mentors and mentees to tackle problems together, to share their experiences and learn together has really proven successful and beneficial. For example, in India and in Uganda, they have harnessed collaborative way of learning in order to co-create solutions. And this methodology also has led to women organizing themselves into networks and alliances. And the last point to speak about is face-to-face versus technology-mediated communication. You know, the COVID-19 crisis has compelled the world to what is called a technology-driven, no-touch future. I remember that it's Naomi Klein, activist Naomi Klein, who coined this phrase. And undeniably, technology has worked as an enabler of dialogue, of information sharing and learning. We are, in fact, being enabled by technology in this very privileged conversation. Online literacy has also been incorporated, for example, by our colleagues in India in training and mentoring session in response to the crisis. There is, however, an intergenerational aspect to the use of technology. Social media, for example, works very well with young women across the Commonwealth or young people across the Commonwealth and beyond, while face-to-face conversation are preferred by women, for example, who are in the villages. And this leads us to the issue of the prevailing inequity in the area of access to technology. We cannot assume that we all have equal access to technology. Grassroots and even urban communities do not necessarily have access to mobile phones and internet or good connectivity. It was also argued that technology is never able to replace one-to-one culturally situated interactions. Next slide, please. Now, allow me to just share with you as a final contribution, share with you the lessons learned, insights from people we've interviewed on how it can be done differently and better. The first point to make is that it was cited that short-term mentoring arrangements do not work when the process is abbreviated and projectized. The chances of success is minimal. So it is not a project. We need to be able to go beyond rigid structures. Mentoring relationships that are personalized and based on mutual commitment to learn have proven to really grow over time. It may start slow, it's iterative, but then personalized mentoring is more sustainable than very, very much formalic or very rigid approaches. Investing in right matches is critical. Balance between a structured matching criteria and a responsive matching process that takes into account values, personalities, expertise, and goals have proven to work better. For example, matching that is based almost exclusively on geographical proximity has not necessarily facilitated an enduring or sustainable mentoring relationship. On the other hand, political affiliations also do not automatically guarantee success of a mentoring program. The second lesson is on resourcing and supportive environment. Formalizing and sustaining a mentoring program, for example, by a local government association or a political party, requires dedicated resources and a robust support system of technical secretariat, of allies and partners. Working together with other like-minded organizations, for example, women's rights organizations, have proven to be successful and must be considered seriously in designing and in implementing mentoring programs. Engaging male allies have also proven to be beneficial. Part of a supportive environment is also having a framework for monitoring, evaluation, and learning. One of the women I interviewed said that it's very helpful to even have a simple process of documenting the successes of their mentoring processes. Now, the last point on some of these lessons is addressing trauma. Now, you may be wondering what this is all about. The review actually indicated that embarking on and staying on course in a political journey can be challenging. This we all know. The issue of trauma and the importance of addressing it was raised in the course of the review. It was suggested that whether women lose or win, they need support to process what they have gone through, particularly those who are only starting in their political journey. And also because trauma is an embodied experience. So one consideration is to design a group sharing on trauma as part of the mentorship. And mentors are not expected to undertake counseling sessions, but may be in a position to organize a meeting or workshop to speak to the issue. So I'll stop there so that we can probably have maybe 5 minutes of question and answer. And I'd like to thank all of you for listening. So if there are questions from the audience, you can either raise your hand or you can just put it in the chat box and we'll, try to answer it. Is there anyone? Do we have any questions?
Looks like we don't have any questions for now.
Okay.
No, that's not
All
true.
right.
I apologize. One has just come in, Min. So the question from a member from Rwanda is, in the recent General Assembly approved for 5-year strategic plan, it's the first time that there's a mentorship handbook. So is it possible to share with us some of the documentation that we've been producing, CLGF, together with you to feed into that?
Well, I think Claire, you can also input into that question. I think yes, the answer is yes. We are making the research a public document. And it, again, as I said in the beginning, is very much part of the Month of Mentoring campaign of CLGF. So definitely, and Claire, maybe you would want to add a little bit more on the next steps of CLGF for the campaign.
Absolutely. I will be saying more at the end of the webinar on our concrete next steps, but part of the month of mentoring is absolutely to hear from our members across the Commonwealth about what concrete things we can do to further support mentoring, both within our member organizations and at a national and subnational level. So this will absolutely be one of the points that we begin to kind of take on board as we gather up that information.
Thank you very much, Claire. There is a question for Vice Chair Kenisha Gordon. I think what it's a question that's relevant, and maybe I can go back to this question and ask it as part of the panel conversation, because it's very much part of our set of questions for the panel. So if there isn't any more questions, Claire, perhaps we can go straight into our conversation with our panel. Allow me now to just give you an overview of what is happening next. So we have a panel of 3 colleagues. We also have a colleague from Platforma who's going to join us as part of the panel. So what we'd like to do is perhaps give our panel about 7 to 10 minutes each to respond to the question that I'll be posing to each one of them. We would like to make this interactive. That's why with the exception of my presentation, we did not encourage PowerPoint slides. Rather, we would like to, make it as conversational as we can, and to give each and every panel member a chance to speak, ample time to speak. I'll be doing the time check, and if we're going over, I will give you a heads up. So we have panel members from Africa, from the Caribbean. Unfortunately, we do not have the person we have from Canada is unable to make it. Am I correct, Claire?
Yes, but we do have some colleagues from FCM who may be able to give a little input, perhaps at the end of the panel.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that. And so without further ado, let's begin the conversation. I will introduce the member of the panel as we move along before I give the question. So the first one is Beauty Katebe from Zambia. Beauty is a national chairperson of the Zambia National Women's Lobby. Thank you very much, Beauty, for being with us. We're really excited to have you here and to share your experience. And what I'd like to ask you is, in setting up and sustaining a successful mentoring program in your context in Zambia, what are some of the most important, or what are the challenges that you had to deal with, and what did you do to be able to surmount these challenges in setting up, mentoring programs in Zambia? Beauty?
Thank you so much. I'm actually happy to be here. It's an honor for me as an individual and an honor for the organization that I represent, and also an honor to my country to be part of this conversation. Firstly, I would want to talk about Zambia National Women's Lobby, the organization that I represent. Zambia National Women's Lobby was formed in 1991, basically with the purpose of looking at the low numbers of women in leadership who were not there at all. If they were there, they were very few. So a group of women sat and came up with this organization, and then we began to get a few women in leadership. At that particular time, I want to get to where now the mentorship is being set up. At that particular time, in our constitution, there was nothing to do with the qualification, the academic qualification for you to get the seat in the local government or even in parliament. So we had a lot of women that were showing interest after the council, after being talked to. A lot of women showed interest in wanting to participate. So we got into the council and also into parliament, women that had
Beauty?
It was very difficult to get the women that were at the academic qualification. Then we had a challenge. Hello? Yes, we had a challenge in 2016 general elections when we had a constitutional review process, which constitutional review process brought in the clause that needed the women to have the basic qualification of the general certificate of education, that is the GCE. That was 2016 when we underwent the constitutional review process. And the same year, we were having the general elections. What that meant was that all the women who had no basic qualification of the GCE had to pack out. And because it's a short period of time, we needed to bring in women and girls that had the qualification that was prescribed by the Constitution. So then it meant we needed to have the mentors for the girls to qualify to go into local government. So the women that were packing, before the Constitution was reviewed, we had to mentor them professionally, because I mentioned in the preamble that the women that we had no qualification. So they underwent professional mentorship so that they could have the skill to be in management. Of course, when you get into local government, then you are getting into management of some affairs. So we had to give them that kind of mentorship. But then at the end of the day, they became very qualified in terms of being seasoned politicians. But then these are the seasoned politicians that are packing out because they do not have the GCE qualification. Then we are bringing in the young ones or those women that had the qualification. So now that year in 2016, luckily enough, we had a project with the British Council and Zambia Accountability Program. We were doing mentorship. So we quickly moved into pairing those women that were packing out with those girls and women that had the qualification to quickly come and take up the slot. So that mentorship went on, and it was quite interesting. Some mentors were not willing to be part because I'm sure they were still battling with the issue of I'm packing out, and then someone is coming in. And quickly in the same year, you are told to mentor this one who's coming in. So a lot of our seasoned politicians in that line could not accept just there and then and easily to take up that responsibility. But by and large, we managed to get the mentors and the mentees. And then we managed, I think in that year of 2016, in that general election, we managed to get about 123 councillors in Parliament. That is a growing number from the previous number, which was 83 councillors. All those numbers I'm mentioning, 83 and 123 councillors, is out of 1,624. So even if we are saying it grew, yes, because we saw the number growing because of the works that the Zambian National Women's Lobby was doing with the women. But those numbers, we are talking about 9% of the members of the local government, which is negligible, but we grew anyway. We had those challenges in setting up, and also we had the successes like I've mentioned, but then in setting up again and in all implementing the whole project that we came up with, we also had issues of logistics. In Zambia, you realize that most of our leaders in the council come from the rural, that is the women. They come from the rural part of Zambia. All the urban parts are a preserve for men. That I'm sure you understand. All the urban parts of Zambia are some kind of a preserve for men. So then when I talk about logistics, you see that if we have a mentor in Lusaka, she will have to travel 600 kilometers to go and meet the mentee, which is quite challenging, and financially we get constrained. But then even when we say, let us bring all the mentees together so that we can bring the mentors to where they are, we still have to face the logistical problems, which has a financial implication, because we have to lodge them in a hotel, we have to provide for their food and all that. So it's quite challenging. And also then it becomes a challenge again when it becomes, when we come to the sustainability part of the program and the project, because as an organization, we are donor dependent. We are an NGO, and governments does not allow an NGO to embark on an income generating project. So we are donor dependent, and if the donor decides to fund the project for 1 year, then for some time you will have to remain and begin to do other project proposals so that you can find another mentor to come, another donor to come on board. But then as Zambia National Women's Lobby, we are saying, why should we just mentor the women that are already grown up? So to look for, to look into the future, we have come up with a program where we are going into schools to begin to mentor the girls so that when they grow up, they will already know that they need to venture into leadership activities of governing of the nation. So all those things I think are a bit challenging. Again, we cannot go in all the secondary schools in Zambia because we do not have the resources. So you find that we have maybe 18 schools at a particular time, which is very, very negligible. But at least the important thing to note here is that when we do those projects with the girls in schools, we find that those are our girls now, even when they are still in school, they become the leaders of the school activities. They are the prefects, they are the head girls and all that. So already we can see that that project is working wonders for us. We also decided to just have a one-off activity every year where we bring all the local government leadership in one place, and we call it a national conference, so that in that conference, they share the best practices. Maybe we have one or two that have done very well in their awards. We bring them to talk to their colleagues so that it's like a mentorship program where one who's doing very fine is able to share the best practices with their colleagues. Also, resources allowing, we have at times done an inter-country mentorship where we pick our women and take them out to a country that we feel is doing much better in terms of placing women in leadership. So we take them there and they learn the best practices. Like last year in 2020, we had political party leaders, those female leaders, we took them to Rwanda. Rwanda, we know that they are doing very fine in terms of placement of women in leadership positions. So we took them to Rwanda. They learned one or two things, and then we feel and expect them to at least implement some of the best practices that they learned from there. So basically, we have our challenges in setting up that, but I think the successes also are more because now our women are so confident. they are able to come out. In the past, in Zambia, you could not see women trying to fight to get into leadership positions. But today we have a lot of them coming out of that cocoon and wanting to be part of the leadership. Apart from there is that glass ceiling that does not just allow anyhow the women to get up there. It's a preserve of some gender. So, but we have a lot of them. So we have women that are very confident, they are capacity built, and we are sure as we move forward, we'll have a lot of other things happening that will be in the positive, especially in engaging the women in these spaces. Thank you.
Great. Excellent. Thank you so very much, Beauty, for sharing that in 10 minutes, which is fantastic. So some of the things you shared, the paper actually talks about, you know, the importance of an enabling environment to be able to support a mentoring program that's institutionalized, you know, that's funded. So you also talked about the importance of resourcing and making sure that that's part of a supportive environment for our women in politics. The other thing that you also spoke about is the importance of sustainability. And, you know, one of the lessons learned, which, you know, I really didn't get into, is that there has been, you know, it was highlighted by mentors that there is a need for a meaningful and organized following up. You know, after, for example, they've achieved their goals, I've received lots of comments that there must be a way to sustain and have an intentional following up, which you actually also talked about. So thank you very much, Beauty, for that contribution. And we'll go back to you, you know, in the next round. What I'd like to do now is to call on the next member of the panel, the Honorable Charity Oforiwa Jomo, District Chief Executive of Tyne District, Bono Region from Ghana. Welcome, Honorable Jomo. And we would like to thank you for joining us, for being with us. And I'd like you to share with us what lessons would you draw from your experience of what to include in a mentoring relationship or in a mentoring program, but also what are the things that you think should be avoided, or what are the things that do not facilitate a successful relationship? So what are the facilitating factors, and what are those things that you think needs to be avoided? So Honorable Jomo, thank you.
So I'm sorry, Honorable, but you are on mute.
Okay.
Now, oh, it's still on mute. It seems to go on quite quickly after.
Zero.
We still can't hear you.
Claire, is it possible to unmute or no?
No. Perhaps what we can do is, while we sort out this problem, we can go to Vernice Belloni, who is also on the call.
Thank you, Claire, for so I'd like to now call Councillor Vernice Belloni, Assistant Local Government Commissioner of Vale Casa Council, Dominica. Welcome, Vernice. So very glad that you're able to be with us. And if you'd like to share with us what key elements you think need to be present for the mentee-mentor relationship.
Hello?
Oh, yes.
Before I answer your question, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Elena from Dominica. I was involved in local government and also director of the Women's Bureau at one time.
Thank you very
your
much.
question is what worked very well as a mentor. Being a mentor of local government practitioners, what worked well for me is the privilege of being a trustworthy advisor, a friend, ensuring you win the trust of your mentees. That is, those who trust you and may even tell their secrets. Never discuss or reveal the things shared with you by your mentee. Another key aspect that worked well is encouragement. This helps you as a mentor to master whatever situation he or she is in. Thank you. The important ingredients in nurturing a mentorship relationship. The important ingredients in nurturing a mentee relationship is the gift of listening. Listening to your mentee's problems, concerns, with no interruptions ensures that your mentee or mentor trusts you at all costs. If I had an opportunity to do things differently, in mentoring women for political office, I tackled the systematic issues and powers imbalances such as discrimination. Reassure them that politics is not only for males, and do not neglect responsibility as a woman at home in spite of the fact that you are a politician. Be honest in all respects of campaigning. Don't criticize your opponent on the other side, and avoid buying votes in cash or kind. Because a lot of politicians buy their votes and do not speak the truth all the time. And in my political life, I always was very honest in what I did and what I said. And of course, my people respected me a lot. In every community where I represented, I ensured that I had a very active local group that worked for the party that I represent and for my representation. Well, I did tell you that I was a very active member of the women's organizations in my country. I was on the executive of the Women's Bureau. I was director of Women's Bureau at one time, and I was an executive of the women's groups. In my own community, I had a very active women's group. We had our own center. We organized training for women in all categories.
Great. Well, thank you so very much, Councillor Bernice. It's really wonderful to have you. Sorry, you're on mute. Can you unmute yourself? Go ahead. Go ahead.
Saying I was also a teacher. I was a principal of several schools, and there I assisted the young people to lead a life worthy of their future and prepare themselves for the future.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
I also worked as a volunteer in the credit union movement. As one time I was.
Oops. Okay, so I think it's frozen for a bit, but thank you so very much, Councillor Bernice Belloni, for that important insight and contribution, reinforcing some of the things that we talked about in the paper, the importance of trust, you know, the principle of confidentiality, which is really imperative in trust building. And also, you were talking about, you know, the importance of partnership and solidarity and building allies within your community, which really resonated in the paper. The other thing is about listening, providing encouragement, and also speaking or encouraging. I think solidarity is also mentors sort of giving confidence and courage to the mentees to actually speak truth to power, for example, and address power imbalances. So thank you very much for that reinforcement, insights that really reinforce some of the findings and analysis in the paper. Now, we would like now to call again the Honorable Charity Oforiwa Jomo from Ghana. If you can unmute yourself, Honorable Jomo,
Okay.
we would be
Hello?
happy to. Yes, we can hear you.
Now you can hear me, thank God.
Yes. Thank you so very much
Thank
for your
God.
patience. So if you can share with us the lessons that you would draw from your experience as a mentor, or even when you were being mentored, what to include in and what to avoid in a mentoring program or a mentoring relationship.
Thank you
Honorable
very
Jomo,
much.
please.
Thank you very much, Maine. As a district chief executive in Ghana, it's like being a mayor. I think the comparative is being like a mayor. When you come to our district, that is the Tyne district in Borno region, currently, we have no female elected onto the assembly. When I assumed office, there were 3, but during the re-elections, 2 stood for elections and lost. And so I had to make sure that 4 were appointed. So I kind of, just rope them in so that we can have women representation at the assembly. Now, when you are mentoring, the problem that we found out, we realized was that you cannot get really committed mentors. That was some of the problems that we have. So it would be very good that when you are organizing or drawing out a strategy for mentorship programs, you find committed mentors who really want to give their time and who really are passionate about what they are doing. And they shouldn't feel like they are doing just a job, but they must be passionate about the mentorship assignment that they embark on, because it's very, very key. Commitment is very, very key. Now, the other thing that I would say that any mentorship program should include is a perfect match. Usually we say that women are our own enemies, but I don't think so. I know when you find a perfect match, that myth can be broken. We are very good at nurturing. We are the best when it comes to nurturing. So it's very important that you include criteria whereby we get the perfect match so that the mentor and the mentee can learn from the mentor, and the mentor can even learn from the mentee as they go along. Another thing that I also encourage from the conversations I had with the women I'm mentoring is that they do not sometimes know exactly what they want to do in local politics. They want to enter local politics, but they don't know exactly what to do. When you come to Ghana and you come down to the grassroots, we have area council chairman, we have assembly women, we have unit committee, even with waste and sanitation, water sanitation programs, we call them WATSANs. I try to incorporate women into them. So you have to find out from them exactly which level or what type of local politics do you want to enter into, and then you know how to strategize their mentoring programs for them. Another thing that we need to include in mentorship programs is good communication skills. Some of these women are very good, even the elderly ones, sometimes you think the old ones cannot do the job. Yeah, in fact, the grannies are even best. They're the best politicians you can get in Ghana, the grannies. We need to teach them communication skills, because sometimes what you say may put off another female. But if you know how to put it, how to phrase it, it will encourage a lot of the young girls to come in, and we can then sustain it through good communication skills and then encouragement and nurturing. The next one that I would say that any good mentoring program should include is support systems. Very, very important. Sometimes we have to go for workshops. Sometimes we have to go for some programs. But because they are at the childbearing age, mothers, I'm talking about mothers, you realize that they'll tell you that I don't have childcare, so I can't join you. And sometimes it's really, really sad, when these women have to miss out on these programs. So usually I ask them to let me know beforehand so that we can organize childcare. So any mentoring program, if we really want our women to go into politics and we want to mentor them, should think of provision of childcare just in case. The other one that I realized too was self-confidence. In fact, all the ladies, all the women I spoke to, what they said was that, I don't think I can do it. And I'm like, why can't you do it? Because when you look at women, we are always multitasking, we are multi-skilled. So we have to teach them to be self-confident. And sometimes when they lose elections, I mean, that is the last straw. They don't even want to come out again. They feel like they feel ashamed, as if they've done something wrong. So we need to build workshops that will teach them how to build on their self-confidence. Once they have the self-confidence, I think most of the issues will kind of fade away. The self-confidence is very, very, very important. And it is all out of, if I lose the elections, what happens after that? If I lose the elections? And I keep on telling them that is the end. That is not the end of the world. That is not the end of the tunnel. There are other options. You can come again. I keep on telling them, try again. And as you try and try again, you get better at your communication skills. You get better at presenting your views and all that. And people will even get to know you more. And they kind of say that, oh, you are a resilient person, you are trustworthy. So they shouldn't stop when they try the first time and they lose elections. Another thing that also makes them women not want to enter into politics at the grassroots, and I'll take the example from my women that I'm mentoring, is they will tell you that the intimidation is too much. In fact, the males, that machoism is just terrible. They make the women feel so inferior. And the cultural background is the man is superior. And sometimes women do not want to speak up. They will look like they are being rude or they are challenging their male counterpart. But we have to teach them. So we need to educate them so that the intimidation, we need to educate some kind of program in the mentorship program, educating them that when you speak up, when you are assertive, you are not being rude. You just make it your point, and you can make it politely without being abusive or insulting. So we need to add that kind of program into our mentorship program so that the intimidation that the women feel can kind of be forestalled. Now, the other one that I would say is community awareness, please. When you come to communities that I am a DC in fact, we belong to a very low income bracket group, and a male telling her husband or her father-in-law or even her own father that I'm going into politics, it's it's a very big thing to do. You have to be very, very bold. So if we are organizing, we are strategizing mentorship, we have to find a way and rope these people in, these stakeholders in. Let the spouses come for a program, just one or two, to let them know exactly what we are trying to do. Let the opinion leaders in the communities, the chiefs, the heads of a family and stuff like that, be part of the program. So when they come, they realize that we are doing a good thing. In Ghana, we have this adage that when you educate a woman, you educate a nation. But when you educate a man, you educate just a single person. And it is something that is within the community. In fact, the matriarch, it's very, very important as much as the patriarch it is. So when you let them know that it's just like the old traditional system, mommy taking care of the family, but in a political way, it will really help. So we need to make the community aware that women in politics is important, so they should support them. And then their spouses should also know that their women are not going anywhere. Sometimes you hear things like, oh, she's having extramarital affairs and all that. And I'm telling you, no African woman wants to lose her husband in that way. They feel that it's shameful. So we need to let the stakeholders in the community be aware of such mentorship programs, so that when we're going for workshops and other things, they gladly do the childcare, they gladly support in the household chores, and they will even gladly see the women go off to the programs. The next one is building trust. Very, very important to build trust, because as I said, it's very intimidating. It's a macho world out there, and sometimes they confide in you, become a confidant. So please, We need to build the trust, and it should be mutual. You trust the person also trusts you, and that makes it easy for you to exchange ideas. Availability of finance and access to financial support should also be part of the program. Even if the government do not have it, there are so many NGOs that help in women who want to go into politics or sustain women in politics. We have to find out where they are and then teach them how to access those funds so that they can include it in their mentorship program. Now, what not to include? In fact, the women were unanimous. They said, "Mommy, do not patronize us. Just let us go. Teach us, give us the skills, the tools." And it's a beauty, you know, when you watch them, you teach them communication skills and all that, and you go out with them on endeavors, on public speaking assignments, and these young leaders just stand on the, how do you call it, in the crowd, stand on in the pulpit and they speak, and then they learn from the mistakes they made, the feedback that we get, they learn from it. So please, we should not patronize them. Let them speak for themselves. Let them show them what they are made of to the people that they want to represent, so that the people can know that, yes, they are not just puppets, they actually can stand on their own. Another thing
Honorable Jomo, can we start wrapping up?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, another thing that we should not do is the relationship should not be one of an agony aunt. When you are mentoring, sometimes if you are not careful, you may digress because your domestic issues may come to you. So you have to be able to have a clear line between what you are doing and what you are not supposed to do. You are supposed to be mentoring the person for a particular goal and not an agony aunt. I think that I will end up here and say that the person has reposed her trust in you. So please do not betray that trust. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Honorable Jomo. That's really excellent. All the contributions thus far have been reinforcing, Claire, the findings of the paper. And just to synthesize the contribution from Honorable Jomo, I think one of the things that has been said by the women is that mentoring is a commitment and it's all about passion. So you cannot go in there half-hearted because it's gonna show up. So that's something that resonated to a lot of women. Also, this whole concept of accompaniment, that it's about accompanying women for self-discovery, accompanying women for confidence building, accompanying women so that their voices can be amplified, are the things, Honorable Jomo, that you were talking about so eloquently. Also, trust, was very much number one in all the conversations, in all the interviews, and that you cannot proceed with a long-term commitment if there is no trust, mutual trust. And I really like the comment about do not patronize us. I think that's something that we really need to be mindful of, and also the boundary setting. And I think the other side of that is it's also about accountability. When you have clear goals and when there is a clear sort of targets or target outcomes, then it becomes sort of more manageable to continue with the process. So thank you so very much again for that. Now I'd like to request Vice Chair Kenisha Gordon, who gave us a beautiful remarks in the beginning. There was a question, Vice Chair, from the audience, but that also kind of connects with the question we want to ask you, which is, do mentoring programs fill a distinct gap in support of women leaders? And if you can speak a little bit about that, and which connects to the question that was asked earlier, what were some of the key challenges you faced starting out? What specific aspects of the networking and mentoring support you received did you find most valuable? So sort of two sides to a question. Thank you very much, Vice Chair.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the amazing work that you have been doing in leading this session. I am thoroughly enjoying it. I faced many challenges when I entered politics. First of all, there was this age stereotyping because I entered at 23 years old. And at the time when I entered, I was the youngest councillor in the island and one of the youngest in history. So I believe that a large pocket of the population was not prepared to deal with a very young councillor. They were accustomed to their councillors being in mid-age. So that was a challenge. For me, I had to work twice as hard to prove that I wasn't a child and I was an adult who was capable of making big decisions that I know very well would impact the lives of people, change communities. So I knew at 23 years old that it's like I had weight to carry on my shoulders. And so I could not allow the narrative of me being too young to get into the way, particularly for the reason that I served in communities that were extremely challenging, historically challenged communities with lots of social ills, but communities with amazing people who really are looking to their political leaders to implement programs and strategies to transform their lives, which I would have touched on earlier about some of the educational programs and small business ventures that I would have implemented with the team. Because as I also said, it was never just about me, but it was a teamwork effort. Another challenge that I experienced as a young councillor was community need versus community want, balancing community need versus community want. For example, when I entered, because of the state of the division, I was excited to do infrastructural programs, fix up schools, to ensure that there are facilities to promote good quality education and to ensure physical infrastructure to sort of change the landscape, to attract more investors to the communities, and it's just change the overall community pride and aesthetics and the perceptions that people have of persons from the community. But that was what I thought that the community needed. And based on data from social agencies, those were very important because the police wanted better access to the communities. Emergency services wanted better access, and even the people needed better access to move about quickly, particularly when they were faced with, for example, a health emergency. But they wanted personal attention. They wanted to do their own little thing. In Jamaica, they call it juggling, which is their little means of economic engagement to go about their daily life. So I didn't register that as something bad, because behind that want was the burning desire for self-reliance. So what I had to do, but before I get to that, for my first year, I was moving along with the infrastructural development and assistance of educational institution. Ladies and gentlemen, I was resented. The community was not excited about that approach. I listened, consulted, strategized, and decided to make no decision on my own, but to make the community make the decision. Out of those consultations came hybrid programs, meaning programs that are a blend of infrastructural development and social welfare. And I got extremely popular, I must say, because of that approach. The people liked it. But what I got from that was the power of teamwork, the power of getting people involved in the decision-making process, and political representatives understanding that they are accountable to the people and that they're not representing themselves, but they're representing the interests of the people. So those are some of the challenges. I would also want to mention the fact that I was not psychologically prepared to deal with gender stereotypes that were levied on me. The truth is, I know that the larger percentage of the population are accustomed to and appreciate male leadership because that's what they know for generations. In fact, data on Caribbean politics revealed that much of Caribbean population, even to this day, still believe that men make better leaders than women. So I wasn't prepared for that. I will share my experience at my first national convention as a counselor. And a constituent looked at me while I was on the ground organizing and said to me, I am tired of women leadership. Why is it that this division has 2 women leading it when the division is so challenging? So right there and then, what that constituent was doing was sizing up the women leaders and saying that we are not able to deal with a political climate that is as challenging as the one that we were representing. But from my experience and knowledge of the political leadership, the women political leadership in the area, I know that he was just at the height of his imagination. So I didn't pay much attention. However, I know that there were other people who were thinking like him and that I would have to work extremely hard to prove myself. Even though, of course, that was a stretch of my energy because, you know, I have to be proving myself to persons, and it's unfair to women that we have to be working twice as hard as our male counterpart to prove ourselves. And I hope that out of forum like this, women will become so much more confident, and not just confident, but women will understand that they belong at the decision-making table and that it is not a favor, but they belong at the table. Another challenge was that.
Can you just wrap up, Vice Chair? Just start wrapping up.
Right. It was a male-dominated world, and the boys had the support of each other, and the money class were behind the men because they believed that they would never have the issue of childcare and other issues that we face as women, whether it is our monthly period. So period poverty is something too that maybe in another session we could look at how that affects women in local government. How mentorship help is that mentorship is a social investment. That's the first thing I want to put out there, that mentorship is a social investment that provide a personalized one-on-one, as Ming mentioned earlier, one-on-one training for personal and professional development. So networking, to answer, I think it's Adele's question, networking functioned for me as a confidence booster, 1, and then 2, it was a training ground for me to practice and become better so that I could own my leadership skills, learn from other people, see how it's done, and implement it back. And the final thing that I want to say is about the benefit of mentorship is that it is important to protecting the mental health of women in leadership, because that one-on-one, let us never take that one-on-one for granted, because no matter what a woman is going through. Political leadership is no joke. It is a challenging thing. And so mentorship and networking helps to protect the mental well-being of women, especially when they have that platform to share and learn from other people and know that other women are experiencing the same challenges that they are experiencing. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair, for that. It's interesting that you presented the concept of ageism, which sometimes we think only of older women, but even younger women are discriminated and actually challenged. I also really like your emphasis on the social investment and the mental health aspect, which is the last point I shared in the lessons learned, is that it can be traumatic, the whole journey. And so solidarity, accompaniment is so important. Thank you so much for sharing your personal journey and really encouraging. Now, I'd like to call on Elena Pierce of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, who's joined us. And perhaps, Elena, in about 5 minutes, if you can share with us how the FCM mentoring program, the one that you support, fills a distinct gap, in being able to support women leaders and also able to promote gender parity in local government. Thank you very much, Elena.
Thank you, Min, and apologies for the mayor not being able to attend today at the last minute, but I'm glad that I'm able to fill in. And I'm just going to talk quickly about our programming over the last number of years. Mentorship as a concept is not new to us. Actually, we have been implementing programming that has a focus on mentorship for about a decade or so now. Really starting in Toronto through what we call the Protégé program, of which there was a partnership that Toronto was doing between council and young women throughout the city. To become, to participate in council meetings, to participate in sort of the affairs of councillors. And this was with men and women. And then we developed a program that became a national program that had that sort of same dimensions. And so that was quite successful. And then since then, we've implemented a number of other projects, including our most recent project, which is our Toward Parity in Municipal Politics, in which we also have developed a framework which can be found on our website, and I can share that link after I speak. But there we had 20 demonstration projects that sort of, captured what is the sector's approach to engaging more women in politics at all, in all ages, from the young to the old and everything in between. And because we had worked on these programs for so many years, and it was sort of, where do we go from here now? This was sort of a culmination of a variety of projects. And the framework is really a guiding document to our new project, the Canadian Women in Local Leadership Project, of which we just had approved actually this year. And so we started that in April 1. So there's no results yet, but we'll come back to you on that one. But the Toward Parity project really was that mix of thinking through and gathering through the framework, the experience, the consultations of close to 1,000 individuals across the country over a period of a couple of years. And we had 20 demonstration projects, of which the mayor was involved in. And so that information can be, you can also access that information as well. The interesting thing about some of these projects was that they did focus on mentorship, and it really was about sort of a regional approach. Seeing numbers around the range of 20 to 25% representation, both within local governments, but also First Nations communities, which are a really critical population in Canada. Making sure that there was a collective, interest and will to have those women involved in politics. And so there's two examples within the document the CLGF has pulled together, one from St. Catharines, Ontario, and one from Nova Scotia, Cape Breton region specifically, that you can look at when you look at the document. But just highlighting some of the key points that we saw as really important as part of the mentorship process. And we see the mentorship process as one that is about the mentorship needing to run for office to get people interested and involved, the mentorship needed when you're in office, because you know what, the reality that you face when you get elected is very different than what you see in the media and as a public citizen. And so there's a need for mentorship there, but there's also a need for mentorship in terms of staying in office. And that could be just simply on how to run a better campaign. Yes, you were successful the first time. It doesn't mean that you're going to be successful the next time. And so there's different types of mentorship, which, you know, go through a sort of spectrum of making sure that women continue to be involved, you know, and to see it as you know, more than just a few years, that they're committing to, you know, helping their community over a longer period of time. So again, the comments that are made today already around facilitating training and workshops and around mentorship are really important. Creating mentorship around thematic topics of mutual interest. For example, rural Canada. Most of rural Canada is represented by old retired male farmers. So how do you make sure that the women, both, you know, who are retired but who are younger, are also engaging in the political process in rural parts of any country? And obviously our example is in Canada. And maybe finding ways to maybe, you know, look at mentorship around rural agricultural as a topic that resonates with the population that you're of that community. It's really important to engage men in the process. Men can be mentors in this process. They need to be champions of women. Women talking to women only is limiting. We need to involve men and having them understand the importance of gender equality, the importance of women in leadership, and the importance of marginalized populations in the discussion. So that's a really important part of the mentorship process. And they too can be mentored to understand better what that all means. And then to look at it from a civics perspective, to engage people at a young age through school age programs, through, you know, community groups and youth groups, but also going into schools as elected leaders and talking to children about what it means, what is local governments. Very much a lot of our curriculum doesn't include local governments. It's really important to share that story, to share with students that, you know, every aspect of their day has something to do with local governments. They wake up, they brush their teeth, water is provided by the municipality, they get their garbage picked up, that's from the municipality, and they go through a day of what those examples are. And students that are around, you know, the age of 10 or older start to understand, wait a second, there's a connection here, and they start to see the leadership in their community in the faces of the people that come to see them, which hopefully are women as well. So those are some of the aspects or some of the approaches that we've seen as being successful, but really it's really important to see it from that, you know, getting those individuals interested, but then ensuring that they have the tools throughout the process to continue to be involved, to continue to have interest in running for office, even if they're not successful the first time, taking different tactics, you know, different approaches and creating a network for themselves. There's, I mean, you could talk about this for hours on end, and I'm very passionate about myself, but those are some of the things that we found in our program.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you so very much, Elena. It would be great if you can share the link for the 20 demonstration projects. And I'm saying that as Canadian, I'm very proud that the 20 demonstration projects of FCM actually really shows you the diversity and the cultural and contextual specificity. So you can really see the different ways by which mentoring programs respond uniquely. Also, I'd like to say that, Elena, you're reinforcing one of the things that was included in the paper, which is engaging the men. Because the women were really saying that we need to engage the men as allies, and that should be part of the mentoring process. And Claire, the month of mentoring campaign is very much aligned with the civic awareness that Elena is talking about. And I think it's really important to get, you know, a robust, spark a conversation, a robust conversation across the Commonwealth and beyond. So thank you very much, Elena. Now, last but not the least, you know, the time just flew. I mean, all the contributions were just really interesting and excellent. But last but not the least, and thank you very much, Jamie, for being with us. Jamie Just is the coordinator, citizenship team, equality and diversity from Platforma, the partner of CLGF. Thank you, Jamie, for also partnering with us and doing this important work. So if you can respond to what you've heard, the rich conversation, that would really be great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Min. And well, thank you to CLGF for the invitation to speak today. We really appreciate our partnership and our alliance within Platforma. So this is a tough act to follow. It's been a real honor to be here with so many inspiring and accomplished women leaders. And also congratulations to Ms. Garcia on your excellent work on the paper. So what I'll do is just very quickly share why this topic of women's leadership and empowerment is so important for Platforma, and then react to what has been shared with the panelists this afternoon. So as mentioned in the paper, Platforma is a pan-European coalition of towns and regions, as well as their national, European, and global associations, such as CLGF, who are active in city-to-city cooperation and region-to-region development cooperation. And gender is a cross-cutting focus for this partnership. Specifically in our work on localizing the SDGs, but the Council of European Municipalities and Regions, which is one of the lead partners in the consortium, we do have a European Charter for Equality of Women and Men in Local Life, which is a political document and tool that assists local governments in their quest to promote gender equality, especially in the area of equal representation and influence of women and men. So Platforma has been active in ensuring the voice of local and regional government in the preparation of the EU's most recent strategic document on gender in external relations. It's the GAP 3, so gender equality and women's empowerment. And we had a lot of key messages around the issue of parity, because for us, equal voice at the decision-making table, it's important that the community that's being represented is at the table. And we know that women are not a minority group. We represent 50% or more of the population. So it's actually a question of democracy, of effective democracy, that women are having an equal space at the table. So we look to do what CLGF does and create opportunities for women in local and regional governments to meet, exchange, develop strategies, and tackle those common challenges that came up today, and the structural barriers to equal representation and influence. It's very challenging to wrap what everybody said and react, but it's true that I'm gonna rebound a little bit on something that Councillor Gordon shared about the situation of women in local government. We're falling behind. It's not just in the Caribbean or Jamaica, it's also a major issue in Europe. So whereas you mentioned that women represent about 18% of local councillors in Jamaica, yet no women mayors, or 7.6 of the deputy mayors, we see a parallel exactly in Europe. We have around 29% or 30% women councillors and 15% of women mayors. So now we're not just tackling the issue of having women in government, but the women in the topmost positions of leadership. And to kind of summarize what all of the speakers said today, we clearly don't have a problem of lack of interest from women to be involved in politics, or that there's not enough women out there. And I cannot stress how many times I have heard this refrain. But there's no women who are interested in running for that position. We can't find them. I'm not convinced by this. So aside from the well-known structural barriers, as Honorable Duomo mentioned, women can be interested but not sure about what to do, where to get started, what type of politics they want to enter. excuse me, and they also need a confidence boost. But we must be mindful also, while we need to build the skills and capacity to help women be confident, overcome these structural barriers, please let us not forget that it's not the women who need to change themselves. It's the systems around them that need to change, like the provision of childcare, changing those mentalities and stereotypes around age and gender. So for example, that a strong woman is seen as bossy, as Councillor Bellamy mentioned. And we cannot underestimate women's ability to lead. So for successful mentoring, again, enabling environment, sustainable financing, and then again, to emphasize Councillor Bellamy's message on relationships, we need listening, trust, honesty, and strategizing amongst women together to face the common challenges and have solidarity even across party lines. And this is something I've seen in the successful mentoring schemes here in Europe, in Spain, for example. The Virginia Woolf Basque-Escola, it's not party oriented. It's not a committee within a political group or party. It's women from all the different groups coming together to face the common challenges. So I'll just finish right now to say the time is now. We cannot accept these gender gaps in leadership. I think we are all convinced here. It's an affront to representative democracy, gender gaps. And as Councillor Gordon said, 135 years until we have equal representation. It's up to all individuals, women, men, groups, associations, grassroots organizations to come together and drive the progress forward so that we can achieve SDG 5, especially 5.1b, my favorite target of the SDGs. So thank you so much for this opportunity, and let's keep going with the transformative possibilities of mentoring to bridge the gap in leadership.
Thank you very much, Jamie. That was well said. Thank you very, very much. And before I turn it over to Claire, I think what remains for me to say, I just read two things to build on what Jamie said. One is transformative mentoring, I think, is an integral piece of the puzzle to be able to meet and even surpass the 30% target, for example, for women to be in political leadership, which Vice Chair earlier cited. And the second point is I'd really like to encourage all of you women to organize conversations like this wherever you are, whether it's Zoom or face-to-face. Now that, the pandemic is, well, I think it's too soon for me to say that it's over, but to say that these kinds of conversations are needed. And Claire, thank you again to you, CLGF and PLATFORMA, for organizing this. And I hope the month of mentoring campaign will actually really come alive across the Commonwealth and the EU. Thank you.
Thank you, Min. I do want to take the opportunity to take one or two questions, if there are any from the floor, before we go for our final remarks. But I do recognize that we are starting to be a bit long on the call. So if there are pressing questions, please raise your hand. Now is the moment. We can also, of course, do follow-up questions and follow up over the month of mentoring over the course of August. But I don't want to cut anyone off if there is a pressing question that we can take right now. Wonderful. I see you are all committed to our timekeeping. Oh, no, I see Freetown City Council. Please take the floor. You will need to unmute, though. I'm sorry, we can't hear you. Well, maybe what I can do as we wait for that is I can say that what we will do right after this question from Freetown City Council is to go back to our panel and give them each 1 minute for a one key takeaway that they want to leave us with. So please, Freetown, go right ahead.
Yeah, I want to say a very big thank you for such an opportunity. This is the first time you're having this international conference. We are experiencing this international conference as a council. Actually, what comes to mind is, I think as women in politics, our aim is to grow in number. And that's what you need to help us do. And for us to achieve that, I think solidarity counts. I want to emphasize on solidarity because I had the experience when we came to council, I was going to aspire as deputy mayor. You know, it was like my contender is a man or was a man. So what happened was like, he was preaching this gender balance. When they are fighting for position, they don't care about gender. When it comes to trying to win over the women to support them, that's the time they will try to preach as if we are subordinate to them. So I want us to awake from that dream that we need to start to support ourselves right from wherever we find ourselves. That's one main thing I want to contribute to. Thank you very much for being part of this conference.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that. And I think that we would very much stand behind that as something that the network is really looking to do to support more women into local government across the Commonwealth. And we're excited to have you here. If this is the first time that you're engaging with us, then hopefully it will be the first of many times. I see one more hand raised, so I will go to Councillor Veronica from Zambia to make a quick comment, and then we will go back to the panel for their closing statements. Councillor Veronica, the floor is yours. Please unmute.
Thank you very much. One of the presenter was the presenter mentioned about perfect matching. Can you elaborate more on that? I didn't understand on perfect matching.
That was honorable. That was Honorable Jomo who was talking about perfect matching. I think what we were trying to communicate in the paper and Honorable Jomo's contribution is matching is really important. And the matching process, you know, being able to pair a mentor and a mentee, having the commitment and being able to learn, you know, I think the idea as well is mutual learning, right? To be able to it's not a top-down relationship, it's a mutual symbiotic relationship of learning. I think that's what the comment is about, which really reinforces what was cited in the paper. Thank you, Claire.
Wonderful. Thank you. So I know we didn't get a lot of chance for questions, but I do want to give our panel the opportunity to give us their one takeaway recommendation coming out of this session, and we will have the opportunity to continue to exchange over the course of August. So Kanisha, as our vice chair, please, your one takeaway. Oh, and you're on mute.
Women supporting women is extremely important, and I believe that we should move forward in supporting women, and it's not simply on the basis of just being women, but it is necessary for development, it is necessary for equality, and it is necessary for a world, a diverse world, where inclusion and inclusivity is in politics, is reflected, is strong, and it paves the way for a working environment that people can thrive and give their very best self. So I would love to see persons interacting more with CLGF and sharing information, sharing their experiences, knowing that together we will achieve gender equality. Thank you all so much for this fantastic opportunity. I appreciate being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Let's go next to Beauty Katebe. Beauty, your one takeaway.
Thank you so much. I think my one takeaway on this one is arising from the submission from Charity, where she talked about intimidation. I had something to talk about, but because she talked about intimidation and how women feel when they are in the presence of the male folk is quite discouraging. So my take on that is that this is a social construct. And especially when you come to Africa, Africa demands that a woman must give respect to a man. But I think my take on that one is that you cannot go all over giving respect to everyone that you meet because he's a man. Then your authority as a woman, your authority as a human being is going to be swallowed by that respect that you give to every Jim and Jack that you meet. So we should actually understand that men that we meet along the corridors are our workmates, are our colleagues, and we can do things together as partners in development. My one take home is that let us build a one woman beyond borders. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So let's now go to Councillor Verlice Belloni. Please, your one takeaway from today's session, your one recommendation to us all.
Let me just thank you for the opportunity to participate in this very important session. I want to say once and for all that we should spend the time to prepare. Women can be very effective representatives, but we have to take time to prepare. Be on the ground to meet the people all the time, listen to their suggestions, and have practical sessions in all aspects of women and development, and sometimes involve the men as well. I thank you for the opportunity to take part in this very important session. I want to thank Yolanda John Jules too, who introduced me to you and to this panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And now we go to Honorable Duomo. Please, your takeaway, your one recommendation for us to take away from this session.
Okay, Claire, thank you very much. And thank you, everyone. It's been a very enlightening discussion. My one takeaway is that when the vice chair was speaking, Kenisha, the statistics she gave was just appalling. Most governments, if I may say, almost all the governments in the world have failed woefully in meeting the SDG 5. So my one takeaway is that government should now make it part of their responsibility to start mentoring programs in all district levels. So we work our way from bottom up so that women can be represented from local government up to the parliament and then even to presidential level. So government should make it part and parcel of their programs or policies to incorporate local, mentorship at the local level. Thank you so much once again. I've really enjoyed myself, and I hope that we continue to uplift each other in politics. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now finally, Elena Pierce from FCM, your one takeaway for today.
Thanks. I think it also goes to that point outside of elected leadership, but also in bringing in gender equality policies and practices within the municipality itself, so that there are ways for women and people across the population to engage in discussions around local governments, because really, I think a beginning step is to understand what local governments are for all populations. So that's the first step to getting interested in running for office. I would like to just say another thing. We look forward as FCM to working with CLGF and Commonwealth countries on this issue, both internationally. We are looking at implementing a new program in some countries and working with CLGF on that, but also our work in Canada. So I just wanted to highlight, and I look forward to those discussions in the future.
Wonderful. Well, I think that now kind of rounds out our panel, rounds out the majority of our work. just comes to me for some small conclusions. The first thing I would like to say is an enormous thank you to all of our speakers today for sharing their experience, for sharing their passion around this issue, for really highlighting things which are key elements around the experience of women in politics, in local government, and more universal issues and areas where mentoring can really help make a difference. I want to say also an enormous thank you to Min Garcia, who was a great moderator over the course of the day today, who managed to synthesize so many of the disparate and rich discussions that we had so far, and for keeping us on track as we went round the Commonwealth in our panel today. So I won't keep you very much longer, but I did want to say 2 words about what CLGF and the Commonwealth Women in Local Government Network are doing as part of our follow-up to this and tomorrow's webinar on the same topic. So August, as of next Monday, we are launching a month of mentoring campaign. And this is really an opportunity for us to continue to exchange on mentoring and to try and set a bit the policy direction both for CLGF, but hopefully also for our member organizations on some of the work to do next. So we have 4 asks for you in this month of mentoring. The first one is that we'll be having a social media campaign on some of the key messages and issues that have come out of the research that we've been working on. So we would ask you to please follow us, to share those messages. We'll have a social media pack that will be accessible to all of you. So please access it, use the messages, use the text, use them as you see fit, and let's really get some of those key messages out during this month. The second ask is that we are encouraging our members to hold their own dialogues at national and subnational level on mentoring and increasing the number of women in local government. And we're going to produce some very simple, hopefully easy to use, supporting tools and documents to facilitate that national and subnational dialogue, And then we'll also be sharing some of the messages that have come out of the research and interview process that we've been doing around our research. So sharing some of the messages directly from women, and we would say, please come online and share your own experiences, share your own messages, and let's amplify the voices of women who are in local government and interested in local government. And finally, we're asking you to share your materials, your reports, your case studies with us so that these can be included on CLGF's Knowledge Hub and made available to the wider Commonwealth Women in Local Government Network. And as part of that, we will be publishing the report that you've been hearing about but not seeing at the end of the month. So gathering in, the final recommendations and key points from the webinar today and tomorrow into our conclusions, and then that will be available in its final published form at the end of the month. So we are very excited about this ongoing dialogue, this campaign that we'll be running. I just want to also make reference to the whole CLGF team who's been really active in getting both this webinar and our month organized. A big thank you to Susan from our communications team, and of course to Janine Xavier-Cross, who is the coordinator of our Commonwealth Women in Local Government Network, but also to all of our regional and HQ teammates who are working on this and helping push those messages out. So yes, thank you very much for a great session today. I look forward to seeing some of you tomorrow, where we'll have the same topic but a different panel. And those of you who are not able to attend tomorrow, both of these webinars will be available on CLGF's website for the entire month of August as part of the resources that we're making available for our month of mentoring. So thank you all very much, and I look forward to continuing this discussion with you. Have a great day.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.